We want that this loop, so the animation we're working on, stops when Fred reaches a certain position on the screen. For example, when he reaches the position 100, so 100 pixels from the middle. Now, we've seen how we can print out. In fact, we're doing two things here. We're asking Python to tell us where Fred is, fred.xscore, and then we're printing it out to the screen. Let me stop the code. Incidentally, if you ever want to stop the code in whichever code it is, you'll be able to find a stop there. If you're using a different editor, you'll have something similar as well. What I want to do is to get my program, every time Fred moves, I wanted to check whether he has reached the point I wanted to reach. And if Fred has reached the point, x is 100, then I wanted to do something. We'll see what that is. If not, keep going, do nothing. This is what I like to think of as asking our computer to make a decision for us. Keep doing something, but check whether Fred has reached this position I want him to reach. If he has, do something. If he hasn't, do something else. And we can do this in Python using an if statement. Let's see how this works. So I want to say if. This is one of those words where it's used in almost exactly the same way in English as in Python. Although, as you can imagine, there are certain rules we need to use when using if in Python. So once again, I need something here that Python will understand as true or false. And I'm going to write this down, and then we're going to spend a bit of time looking at this line I'm going to write. So I want to say if fred.xscore, remember fred.xscore parentheses, gives us the position, the x position, the horizontal position of Fred. I'm not printing it out here because I don't want to see it. I'm going to do something else with this number. If fred.xscore is equal to 100. Now, you might have been thinking, oh, you've got a typo there, Stephen. You've put 2 equals, not 1. That is not a typo. We'll see why we need double equals in a bit. For the time being, let me just print Fred has reached the end. So print, we've seen what print does. It shows me something, not on the graphics display. It will show me something in the bottom of my screen in this case. And Fred has reached the end. They're not special Python commands, so I'm putting them in quotation marks. So I want Python to take this literally. Show me uppercase FRED space has reached the end. Let's see whether this works first of all. So Fred is moving, Fred is moving, Fred is moving. And now let's stop that and scroll back. There we go. You can see that when fred.xscore, we're still printing fred.xscore there, was 100, then this line was printed. Fred has reached the end. In all of the previous ones, when line 16 was checking, what is fred.xscore? Let's take this one. It's 94. Is 94 equals to 100? No. So it ignored that line. It just ignored it completely. But when we reached this case, fred.xscore there is 100. We can see the printout. In this case, fred.xscore equals 100. Python said, yes, fred.xscore is 100. Therefore, it understood this line as true. We'll dive into this in a second. And it looked at the line that has an indent and said, this is the line I'm going to do. So let's look at things we know already. The colon. We've seen it at the end of the while true loop, while true line. The colon means coming next is a chunk of code which has one or more lines that belong together. And the way we're going to show Python which lines belong to the if statement in this case is by putting an indent. And in this case, only one line has an indent. Print Fred has reached the end. We could have more. I could have something else in there. Print goodbye Fred. Goodbye Fred. Let me remove this line. Now, there are two things I could do here. I could delete it, of course. But sometimes you'll see, in fact, I've put it there, but I didn't mention the hashtag. You might be thinking, what was that hash symbol that Stephen used there? I'll use it again here. Whenever I have a line starting with a hash symbol, it means ignore this line. Python doesn't care about it. It's a comment for us human beings. In this case, it was a note I've put for you. In this case, I'm simply saying, ignore this line, but I don't want to delete it. Maybe I want it later on. So that's what the hash symbol is doing. Let's run this code now. And you can see that nothing is printed out there until soon. There we go. The moment Fred hit 100, we now have 2 lines that have been printed out. Fred has reached the end. Goodbye, Fred. Let me remove goodbye, Fred. Oops. So the colon and 1 or more lines with an indent, that's how we're deciding what goes inside the block. What else do we know? We know Fred.xscore brackets gives us a number. So we're left with the equals equals. Let's, in the next lesson, dive into why we need equals equals and not just equals here. And while we're there, we're going to talk more about the types of data that we can have.